From Reddit, my partner keeps joking about my biggest insecurity, and it's starting to really hurt. This is a powerful and deeply personal story. Before we begin, if you appreciate the tales we share, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Reader Tales. Your support allows us to keep bringing you these compelling narratives. Alright, let's get into the story. Hi Reddit, I'm writing this from my sister's couch at 2 in the morning, listening to the rain drumming against the window pane and the low hum of her refrigerator, and I feel hollowed out. I don't know if I'm looking for advice, validation, or just a place to put these feelings so they stop rattling around inside my skull like trapped birds. I just know I can't keep them in anymore. My 28F partner, Liam, 30M, keeps joking about my biggest insecurity, and after 3 years together, it's finally broken something fundamental inside me. For context, my biggest insecurity is a scar. It's not a small, dainty, poetic thing that makes me look mysterious. It's a pale, jagged line that runs from the top of my right cheekbone down to the corner of my mouth. When I smile, it pulls and dimples in a way that's impossible to hide, a permanent disruption on the landscape of my face. I got it when I was 9 years old. My dad, a man who could build anything, had just finished a magnificent treehouse in our backyard. It was my castle, my pirate ship, my spaceship. I was so overwhelmed with joy that I scrambled up the rope ladder too fast on its maiden voyage, my sneakers slipping on the top rung. I fell. It wasn't a long fall, but it was a clumsy one. My face hit the sharp, carved corner of a decorative wooden birdhouse my dad had mounted on the tree trunk below. I remember the fall in disjointed, nightmarish flashes, the feeling of weightlessness, the rough bark of the old oak tree scraping my arm, the sickeningly dull crunch, and then a sudden, shocking warmth spreading across my face that I knew wasn't just tears. I remember my dad's panicked shout, a sound I had never heard from him before, and the look of absolute terror in his eyes as he scooped me up. He held me so tightly, his flannel shirt smelling of sawdust and fear, the emergency room, the dizzying scent of antiseptic, the needle for the stitches feeling like a dozen tiny angry bee sting sits all seared into my memory. My dad sat beside me the whole time, his face pale, whispering, "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry," as if the birdhouse itself was his fault. That scar became tangled up not just in my own trauma, but in his guilt too. The physical wound healed, but the social one festered the moment I returned to school. The first day back, a boy named Kevin pointed at me in the lunch line and yelled, "Whoa, look at Scarface!" The name stuck. I became Scarface, Joker, Zipper, Cheek. Every hushed giggle in the hallway, every sideways glance felt like it was directed at me. I learned to hide behind my hair, to perfect a closed-mouthed smile, to avoid eye contact, to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. It took years of conscious effort, a therapist in college who was worth her weight in gold, and a lot of painful self-reflection to get to a place where I could look in the mirror and not flinch. I accepted it as a part of me, a permanent reminder of a childhood lesson in gravity and misplaced enthusiasm. I was confident in my career, I had friends who loved me, and I was for the most part happy. The scar was just there, a quiet, dormant beast I had learned to live with. Then I met Liam. Our beginning was a whirlwind. We met at a friend's barbecue, and he had this incredible, easy smile and a laugh that made you want to laugh with him, no matter the joke. He was charming, witty, successful, and kind. He looked at me all of me and didn't seem to see the scar first. He saw me. On our third date, my anxiety was getting the better of me, so I decided to just get it over with. I told him the treehouse story, my voice a little shaky as I recounted the fall. He didn't flinch or look away. He just reached across the table, gently traced the line of the scar with the pad of his thumb, and said, "It just proves you were an adventurous kid who couldn't wait to get into her castle. I think it's beautiful." Reddit, the relief was so profound, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. I felt for him so hard in that moment. For the first year, our relationship was a sanctuary. He was my biggest champion, the one who would kiss the scar and tell me it was his favorite part of my face because it was a map of my life. The dormant beast was finally, truly asleep. I felt beautiful, not in spite of my scar, but with it. The first joke happened on a lazy Sunday, about a year into our relationship. We were play wrestling on the couch, tickling each other into breathless laughter, and he pinned me down. He grinned, his face inches from mine, and said, "Yield or face the wrath of Captain Scar Clara." The laughter died in my throat. It felt like a tiny, perfectly round, ice-cold pebble had been dropped into a warm pond. The ripples spread through me instantly. He must have seen the light go out in my eyes because his smile faltered. "What? Too soon?" he asked, trying to keep the mood playful. It's not funny, Liam," I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, come on, babe, I'm just playing," he said, rolling off me and sitting up. I sat up too, pulling a cushion onto my lap like a shield. "I know you are, but that's what the kids in middle school used to call me, or stuff just like it. Can we just not? Can that be the one thing that's off limits for jokes? It's the one thing I'm still. He seemed genuinely remorseful. He came over and wrapped his arms around me, his chin resting on top of my head. "Hey, I'm so sorry, seriously, I didn't know. Of course, it's off limits. No more scar jokes, I love you." I believed him. I thought the beast had just twitched in its sleep and had been soothed back down, but I was wrong. It was waking up, and the man I loved was the one holding the stick, poking it just to see what would happen. The jokes started to creep back in, but they were more insidious now, disguised as witty banter or affectionate teasing. He'd be looking for me in a crowded store and call out, "There you are." I'd recognize that distinctive profile anywhere. He'd introduce me to a new friend and, in telling a story, would say, "And Clara, my very own Bond villainess over here." He always said it with that charming grin, making it seem like a special, funny inside joke between us. But it wasn't our joke. It was my old joke, the one the bullies used to tell at my expense, and he was now the one telling it. Another time, we were at his parents' house for a casual Sunday dinner. His mother, a woman I adored, was asking about my childhood. "Liam tells me you were quite the tomboy," she said with a smile. Before I could answer, Liam jumped in. "Tomboy? Mom, she was a menace. The scar is proof. We call it Exhibit A in the case of Clara versus Gravity. Gravity won, by the way." Decisively. His parents chuckled, and he beamed, proud of his little performance. I just smiled weakly, feeling like an exhibit in a museum, my trauma polished up and put on display for his family's amusement. Every time it happened, a small part of my foundation would crumble. I tried talking to him about it again, more seriously this time. We sat at our kitchen table, the weekend paper sitting unread between us. "Liam," I said, my hands clasped together so tightly my knuckles were white. "We have to talk about the scar jokes again. You promised you would stop, but you haven't. It happened again at your parents' house." He sighed, a long, theatrical, exasperated sound. "Clara, they're not jokes in a mean way. It's just banter. It's how I show affection. I tease the people I love. My dad teases my mom, my brother teases me. It's normal. But you're teasing me about the one thing I've asked you not to," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "The one thing that has caused me real, documented trauma. Can't you pick anything else? Tease me about my terrible taste in reality TV or the way I snort when I laugh too hard. Why does it have to be this one thing?" "Because you're being too sensitive about it," he said, his voice rising in frustration. "It's been almost 20 years. It's a part of you. If you could just learn to laugh at it, it wouldn't have any power over you anymore. Honestly, I think I'm trying to help you." That argument, Reddit, was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. He had reframed his cruelty as a form of exposure therapy. He wasn't hurting me. He was helping me by repeatedly triggering my deepest insecurity. It was such a twisted, self-serving piece of logic that I didn't know how to respond. The conversation ended in a stalemate, with him promising to be more mindful and me feeling completely unheard and deeply, deeply hurt. The pattern continued, and I started to change. I found myself becoming quieter in groups, terrified he would make a comment. I started positioning myself in photos so my good side was always showing, something I hadn't consciously done in years. The confident woman he'd fallen in love with was retreating, and the scared 9-year-old girl, hiding behind her hair, was re-emerging. The worst incident before last night happened during a fight. It was a stupid, mundane argument about finances and a bill I had forgotten to pay. It got heated, and we were both saying things we shouldn't. In a moment of pure frustration, he threw his hands up and said, "It's impossible to have a rational conversation with you. Maybe that fall knocked more than just your face out of alignment." The silence that followed was a physical thing. It filled the room, sucking out all the air. He had used it, not as a joke, but as a weapon. He had taken my deepest vulnerability and deliberately stabbed me with it to win a fight about a utility bill. The look on his face told me he knew he'd gone nuclear. The anger drained away, replaced by a look of, oh shit. He rushed to apologize, wrapping me in his arms as I stood there, frozen and shaking. Clara, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I didn't mean that. I was just angry and I said the stupidest, cruelest thing I could think of. Please, please forgive me. And like a fool, I did. Because I loved him, and because the Liam who held me, crying and apologizing, seemed like a different person from the one who had just gutted me with his words. I told myself it was a one-time, anger-fueled mistake. He would never do it again. Which brings me to last night. It was his company's annual awards dinner, a big fancy affair at a downtown hotel, black tie. I spent a fortune on a new emerald green dress, got my hair and makeup professionally done. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely, breathtakingly beautiful. The makeup artist was a true artist. She hadn't hidden the scar, but had somehow softened it, integrated it, so it was just another line on my face. I felt confident. I felt like May. We were at a round table with his boss, Richard, his boss's wife, Sarah, and a few other senior colleagues and their partners. Everything was going perfectly. Liam was in his element, charming, funny, networking effortlessly. I was relaxed, enjoying the conversation, and feeling proud to be on his arm. Then, Sarah, a kind woman in her 50s, leaned in with a gentle smile. Clara, forgive me for asking, and please don't feel you have to answer, but I've always been curious about the story behind your scar. It has such character. She said it with genuine, respectful curiosity. It was the kind of inquiry I had learned to answer gracefully over the years. I opened my mouth to give her the simple, polite version of the treehouse story. But Liam beat me to it. He let out a loud, booming laugh that made the whole table turn to him. Oh, you mean the zippening? He said, winking at his boss. You should have seen her. 9 years old, thinks she's Spider-Man, and she ends up face-planting a birdhouse so hard we think she's trying to start a new trend in facial piercings. The table went quiet. Not a polite chuckle quiet, but a dead, what did he just say? Quiet. The air solidified. He kept going, either oblivious to the sudden freeze or just not caring, high on the attention. I call her my little Al Pacino, he continued, puffing out his chest and doing a terrible impression. Say hello to my little friend. He gestured dramatically to my face. No one laughed. His boss gave a tight, uncomfortable smile and looked down at his plate. Sarah looked absolutely horrified, her hand flying to her own cheek in a gesture of secondhand embarrassment. In that moment, under the bright, unforgiving lights of the ballroom chandelier, with all eyes on me, I felt every single ounce of my carefully constructed confidence not just shatter, but turn to dust and blow away. The 9-year-old girl was back, standing in front of the entire school assembly, while the class bully pointed and laughed. Only this time, the bully was the man I loved, the man who was supposed to be my sanctuary. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry. A strange, cold calm washed over me. I simply placed my napkin on the table, stood up, my chair making a soft scraping sound on the polished floor. Excuse me, I whispered to the table at large. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, my head held high, my vision blurring at the edges. I walked through the opulent lobby, past the smiling concierge, and out into the cool night air, the sound of Liam calling my name. Clara, wait! It was just a joke, echoing behind me. I didn't stop. I hailed a cab and gave my sister Jessica's address. My phone immediately started blowing up. First, a series of angry texts. Where did you go? You just left me there. You completely embarrassed me in front of my boss. Then, as the minutes turned into an hour, the tone shifted to panic. Clara, please answer. I'm sorry. It was a stupid joke. It was the wine talking. And finally, a string of voicemails, each one more desperate than the last, filled with choked apologies and pleas for me to come home. But I can't. Not this time. When I got to Jessica's, I broke down completely. She just held me while I sobbed, not asking questions until I was ready. When I finally told her the whole story, from the first joke to tonight, her face grew hard. Clara, she said, her voice soft but firm. When he does this, does it make you feel bigger or smaller? Smaller, I whispered. Invisible. And does a person who truly loves you, who respects you, repeatedly and knowingly do the one thing that makes you feel small and invisible? Her question hangs in the air now, hours later. He didn't just poke the beast last night, Reddit. He dressed it up in a tuxedo, put it on a stage, and handed it a microphone. He took my trauma, the story I only share with people I trust, and he turned it into a cheap punchline for professional gain. He keeps saying it was a joke, but a joke is supposed to be funny for everyone. For 3 years, his jokes have only had an audience of one, me, and I'm done being laughed at. So here I am. It's almost dawn. He's texting me right now saying he'll do anything, that he'll go to therapy, that he finally understands. But he said that before. How do you trust that this time is different? How do you rebuild a sense of safety with the person who has made you feel the most exposed and humiliated you've ever felt? I love the man he is 90% of the time, the charming, supportive, brilliant man I fell in love with. But that other 10%, that 10% is emotional terrorism. And I don't know if I can survive another attack or if I even want to try. TLDR, my 30M partner has a long history of making jokes about a prominent facial scar I got as a child, despite my repeated pleas for him to stop. He sees it as harmless teasing to help me get over it. Last night, at a formal work dinner, he publicly humiliated me by telling an exaggerated story about it and giving me a demeaning nickname in front of his boss. I walked out and am now at my sister's place, unsure if the relationship, which feels emotionally abusive, is salvageable.